Thanks, everybody. Super excited to be here. My name is John, TechGeek Tesla. I cover full self-driving in Chicago. Let's see a show of hands. How many of you guys have full self-driving on your cars or have used it before? Awesome. That's great. How many of you use it regularly? Oh, great. Well, you're in good company because everybody up here on stage is using it on a regular basis. I prepared several different questions here to go over with the panelists, and I'm going to start with David Moss. David, rumor has it that you love Canada more than the USA now. And I also heard that you did a coast to coast up there. Is that true?
So part of that is true. Part of that is definitely a lie. Canada sucks. America rules. But definitely drove across Canada, and trying to successfully intervention free with me and two of my buddies, Devin Olson and Spencer at Scott's Rule 08. But Spencer and I especially, and we had our token Canadian Devin. But we were trying to go as fast as we can, not to just set a time, but to get the hell out of there and get back home. But it was an exciting week. I live in Seattle area, so Spencer, he flew up from Dallas and to me in Seattle, and then we drove up to Vancouver, British Columbia, where Devin lives, and then we left Horseshoe Bay, and then we drove all the way across Canada to Halifax, Nova Scotia. It took us 4 days and 21 hours, and then as soon as they could, they flew home, and then I drove to Maine that same day. So, but it was quite the memorable week. But yeah.
Awesome. That's really great. That's impressive. The second question here is for Chris, Dirty Tesla. You've tested FSD in a lot of real-world Michigan driving conditions, and I think you've been testing. You were one of the first ones to get full self-driving, so you have more experience than probably anybody out there. What has surprised you the most about how far it's come?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. So a few things. It's, I've always loved FSD, even in the early days where it was very strange and couldn't do most things, even basic turns and stuff. But it's always been fascinating to use it and experience it and see what it's doing. And watching it go from that to being, like, I don't know about a gimmick, but like the early, development of something really useful into something now that basically does, as David has shown, can pretty much do all your driving, everything A to B, and become something useful, something that's giving people their ability to have freedom to use a car that maybe weren't comfortable before, has been really amazing to just see it become really useful and practical. And then something really specific is just the last winter snow experience was really unbelievable, because for years and years, snow didn't seem to really change much. It didn't seem to get better. The car didn't seem to recognize, like, oh, we have less traction. We should start slowing down earlier, or we should accelerate a little softer here. And last winter, it just was driving. It seemed to drive in the tire tracks. It seemed to accelerate softer. It seemed to brake earlier. It just seemed like a switch was flipped, and it got a snow brain out of nowhere after years and years of not really being able to handle it. So lots of things over the years have changed for the better.
Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. Next question is for Koby Pierce. So Koby is a rising star when it comes to the technical aspects of full self-driving. And he has done a lot of analysis on the different hardware platforms and has a lot of experience using the software. First of all, though, I would just want to poll the audience. How many of you have a hardware 3 car? Raise your hand. Okay. And how many of you have a hardware 4 car? Oh, wow. Okay. A lot more AI 4 cars out there. This question is related to a technical standpoint. What are the biggest differences, Koby, between hardware 3 vehicles with an Intel Atom infotainment system and hardware 3 vehicles with an AMD Ryzen system? And why do you feel that people notice such a noticeable gap in the software features and the overall experience?
Yeah, so a part of that is the big difference between the Intel MCU, which is the infotainment, it's the media control unit, is one was built in the Model 3s and Ys for an older time when the car wasn't as advanced, and you had autopilot and all these things, and the UI features weren't as integrated versus AMD. And now you're starting to even see that even through updates, that the major features that you're not seeing, which is high fidelity park assist with Intel, B-pillar cameras in Sentry mode, those type of things. Is the major deal is the actual cable that goes directly between the MCU, which is the media control unit, and the FSD computer, because the FSD computer is using those B-pillar cameras. But it's not actually processing those through the MCU unit because there's just not enough bandwidth to have all of those cameras transmit through there. So I think that's the major part that you're seeing, is that the bandwidth between the two is not as great, and there's not as much data there and enough compute to be able to run the new UIs.
Awesome. Okay. In the previous panel, there was some talk about robotaxi. So this next question is for Jim. If you could put your car into the robotaxi fleet, would you, and why?
That's a good question. On the surface, it sounds like a great idea, right? Make some money, go to work, have it work for you while you're working. But I think it gets into the practicality of things, is whether or not you want your personal car being used with strangers all the time. For me, the answer would be a hard no. But I think there's a use case there that is really kind of hitting home for me right now. My father-in-law is going to turn 90, and my mother-in-law is 87, and they have no business driving, but they still drive. And it would be really nice for me to have my car drop me off at work and then go pick up my in-laws and take them to the grocery store, take them to whatever activities they're doing, and then pick up kids at school and take them to dance and do the things, and basically have a family robotaxi. I think that is going to be huge once this happens, where a family right now with teenagers that needs 3 or 4 cars can maybe get by with 2. So I think robotaxi in a family environment is going to be massive.
Awesome. And Chris, what do you think most Tesla owners still misunderstand about full self-driving?
Oh man, it's hard because we get a lot of messaging about what it's going to be and what the expectations are, and they're usually not met in the timeline we hope they are met, if that's relatable. But I think the really important thing to focus on is kind of the rate of change and what improvements we are actually seeing, like in the real world. And even though I heard personal unsupervised FSD by the end of the year, right? That's this year? Yeah? All right, cool. So, that's going to happen this time. But despite that, last year and the year before and the year before, we have really seen the evolution and the changes in the software and how it's been improving over time. So seeing those real world improvements, seeing that Tesla has actual driverless, empty robotaxis driving around in multiple cities now is kind of the important part, outside of, maybe it's not unsupervised in your own personal car as soon as we had hoped and all these different things, but seeing that rate of change and seeing the actual change in the real world is incredibly important.
Very cool. Next question is for David. If you could do one thing differently on your coast-to-coast Canada trip, what would it be?
I think it all has to come down to planning. So it was all a very last minute ordeal. We really scheduled it 2, 3, maybe 4 days ahead of time. So wearing the public, I had no idea. Just something I've fallen into on this. I basically just sit on my ass and the car drives myself, and somehow I've led up onto the stage today, and I've no business being here. But people come to the superchargers. People tune in. It's changed my life in so many ways. But so again, don't think about planning. Spencer, one of the co-riders with co-drivers with me, he was actually supposed to be in the Galapagos Islands. Somehow I'd negotiate, talk him out of there, say that's a terrible idea. You should come to Canada with me and sit in a car for 5 days with 2 strange men. And somehow he obliged and did that. And then Devin, he's a professional videographer, but we just we wanted to plan more, take our sweet time, know more about the charge stops, especially hotels. One night, we weren't trying to drive at night just because of the deer. all the small towns and such construction. But there was multiple times we drove for multiple more hours in the night than we really would have wanted to, just because we didn't plan our stops. And we'd call every hotel in town, and every room would be booked, and we'd have to go to the next town, and the same story. So all about the planning, telling about what superchargers were going to be due, and all that. But for all in all, it went pretty smooth. But still wish we would have done a lot more in the beginning planning.
Awesome. Comes down to planning. Very interesting. Jim, will Tesla solve autonomy before they make their auto windshield wipers work?
We all laugh at that question, but I think the answer is going to be yes. And it's kind of a weird thing to think about. We like to complain about those little things that happen in the car, and it comes down to just kind of human behavior. FSD, I mean, it's kind of a fun question to answer, because we all have the days where it wipes the windshield when it's dry, like every 5 minutes. And you ask the question, why Tesla just can't solve that problem with a $5 sensor? The answer is they can, but that's not the problems that they're trying to solve. They're trying to solve bigger things. They've got a bigger picture. And yeah, and those of you that have lived with FSD for a long time, it's not perfect. It still isn't perfect, but it's getting really good. And it's weird how human beings just have a tolerance for bad human drivers, and they just accept it as being okay. And they trust, that human drivers are bad, and that's the way that it is. But when a computer does something weird, like the windshield wipers moving, then it somehow erodes that trust. And it's funny that I think Tesla is doing two things at the same time right now. Is they're teaching their cars how to drive, but they're quietly starting to teach human beings how not to drive. And that's the thing. It's because I think the cars are going to be ready before human beings are ready. And it's happened before. There's history that shows that. There's been, let's talk about elevators. There's been automatic elevators since the late 1800s, but they weren't common until the 1950s. And it took a very long time for the human beings to become okay with the technology. And I think we're on a similar path here with FSD. I think they're going to get there, and people like us here are going to be early adopters, and we're going to be all in. But it's going to be a long time before the masses really take root on this one.
Awesome. All right. So the next question is related to Hardware 3 and version 14 Lite, which is coming by the end of this month. It's going to be a big update. The last time Hardware 3 got an update to full self-driving, as far as the version number goes, was February 2025. So Koby, will Tesla with Tesla bringing version 14 Lite to Hardware 3, what do you think the biggest technical trade-offs will be? Will it mostly be model compression and reduced feature complexity, or are we looking at a deeper difference in how the stack runs compared to Hardware 4?
Yeah, so, a big part of that is that Hardware 4, the big issue between Hardware 3 and Hardware 4 is the memory bandwidth. So they can load a lot more active parameters into, and parameters are just the neural network weights of how it drives, right? The more knowledge that it has. And Hardware 3 can't transfer that knowledge between the solid storage and the memory quick enough. And then also between the compute. So your biggest issue is not going to be feature complexity necessarily. And I think we'll have all of the features that Hardware 4 will have. It's your edge cases, right? Because those edge cases are those extra parameters. I think we can reach a very good level of, it'll be very smooth. It'll be very robotaxi-like, and most people won't be able to tell a difference in the very far future. I think very far future once they've, refined version 14 Lite a little bit, until it comes up to, oh no, there is something that we haven't experienced before, and we have to reason through this, and it just doesn't have those extra parameters that are needed to do that. So it'll be able to solve really tricky situations, but it's not going to get you to that last, the trailing nines of safety. And I think that's the big problem for unsupervised, and why we won't have unsupervised on Hardware 3. I think we'll have a great driver assistance technology, and I think that's wonderful.
but it's not what we were promised with unsupervised. I'm still excited to get it, and I'm sure that they will upgrade, and I'm very excited about the whole process. But version 14 Lite, I think, is going to, at least for me, be good enough to hold out for the micro factories and the upgrades that they announced in the last quarterly earnings call.
Great. Yeah, in the earnings call, for those of you who don't know, version 14 Lite is going to bring the reverse functionality to hardware 3 finally with FSD. It will be able to park itself a lot better. It will be able to take off going in reverse when you're from park. I'm just excited to see if you can finally hit the button to start self-driving while you're in park. Because right now you have to put it into drive and then start the self-driving. So it's going to be exciting coming up here. Chris, looking ahead, what Tesla product or technology are you most excited to see mature over the next few years?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so much, all the Tesla and SpaceX and all these, basically Elon companies are just constantly pushing everything. It's just insane. The things that, first of all, the ideas are insane. And then they, for the most part, become reality. But of course, like the personal unsupervised, I have a really bad habit of just sleeping everywhere. So when my car is in unsupervised mode, meaning that Stephanie's driving, I'm usually falling asleep in the car. And so when I can do that, when I'm alone and the car is actually unsupervised, I am very looking forward to getting some more sleep. That is number one. But beyond that, because I think we already kind of have a feel for like unsupervised because the cars are so good, I am extremely looking forward to Optimus. I just cannot wait to learn more about it, to see it in actual real world. It's almost like we're going through the whole FSD thing again, where Optimus is going to come out. It's going to be like a little kind of weird and goofy. And it's like, oh yeah, technically it could clean up the house, but it did kind of a bad job and it took forever. And we're going to see that evolution over the next few years. And I just think that this technology has the ability to have such an impact on the world for everybody, from all like classes to all people all over the world, to like help people that are in need, or add assistance where people just don't have enough help, or work at a job where you can't get people working. I think it's just going to have such a huge impact on the earth if it can reach the eventual goal of being like basically a humanoid fully capable replacement. But I think over the next like 5 to 10-ish years, Optimus is really going to be the thing everyone's really going to be interested in. It's super exciting, the potential there.
So I'm curious, just to add on to that question about Cybercab. Do you feel that that is going to be a fully autonomous car when it comes out? And I mean, I heard that you can buy and own that yourself. Is that product something you think is going to be available in the next few years?
Cybercab is interesting because if you get the Model Ys like we have down in Austin and Dallas and everything right now, there's really nothing stopping Cybercab from being the same thing, right? I mean, you already have driverless Teslas driving around in a relatively small geofenced area, but still, the fact is there are supervisorless, driverless, empty Teslas driving around, and Cybercab is just basically a more efficient version of that for so many reasons: more efficient driving, more efficient manufacturing, and all of that. And if you have one passenger now, you're only wasting one seat, right? And if you have two passengers, you're at full capacity rather than wasting two seats, which most rides, that are rideshare are two people or one or two people. So yeah, I think that's another. It's almost like a extremely less capable version of Optimus, where you're getting this technology out there that can just help people get to work or get to school and do it at a much cheaper price.
Awesome. Jim, regarding Actually Smart Summon, just a quick question. How many of you out in the crowd there use Actually Smart Summon on a regular basis? Like once every week, or is it just kind of random? Oh, all the hands went down. Oh no. Yeah, I mean, even with the increased speed, there's still some challenges with Actually Smart Summon. The most embarrassing thing is when you have to run out to go and rescue your car. That's awfully embarrassing. But for Jim here, how practical is it to use Actually Smart Summon, and how often do you get some utility out of it? And would you recommend it to others now that the speed has been at miles per hour in the parking lots?
I have a very love-hate relationship with Actually Smart Summon. I love the idea. It technically works. But the problem that I have with current versions, and I have to admit that I haven't tried the 8 mile an hour yet, and that's going to be an improvement, is that going too slow was a big problem for me in large parking lots. But for me, I don't like inconveniencing other people. And I think using actually Smart Summon inconveniences a lot of people sometimes. Inconveniences other drivers because it's going too slow. People don't like seeing cars driving by themselves, at least not in Iowa yet. And it just, the idea of it is awesome because it should, like, you press a button, it's raining, it comes to you, it's great. You walk out the door as it pulls up. The reality is that, for me anyway, is that I still don't trust it. Getting back to that trust problem, to do it without me physically being able to see the car. I know there's cameras, but for me, that's not enough. And it's supposed to reduce anxiety. It's supposed to make things easier. And I find that when I use it, I'm not. I am more tense and I'm more fearful that it's going to do something weird or that it's going to lose connection halfway the drive and I got to run out and get the car and go, yeah, sorry. But I was really hopeful that when they switched over from the old software stack to the FSD stack, that it would really improve. And I think it is improving. I think if they could just increase the speed a little bit and even above 8, I think it should go probably 10, 11, 12 miles an hour, to be honest with you. But I understand their hesitation in wanting to do that. And having a better control where it starts and the starting and stopping and the resuming quickly. Just making it, if they can make it so an average person moving their shopping cart has no idea whether there's a driver there or not, then they've succeeded. And I don't think they're quite there yet, but I think they'll get there.
So one interesting thing about actually Smart Summon, before it was actually Smart Summon, I would use this feature all the time. I have a key fob. I'm a little bit old school. And with the key fob, you used to be able to hold it down and then the mirrors would fold in and you'd have to tap the front area of the key fob or the trunk area, and then it would go forward or reverse. It was kind of the dumb summon. But that was nice with the key fob. Just a little plug for the key fob. It's a great backup Bluetooth key fob as well. So if your phone doesn't connect for some reason, it's always a nice backup to have in your pocket. This next question is for David Moss. What are the biggest differences between using FSD in the USA versus Canada? And what was the number one most challenging situation for FSD that you encountered?
So I'd say from a technical like FSD, Canada and America is pretty much the same. And when you're in Quebec though, all the signs are in French and they have unique, more horizontal stoplights that are even different than when you see them here in the States. So from using it, the software is great. A little bit, it hesitates a little bit in Quebec, but the routes itself were night and day different. We're lucky in America to have these big, beautiful interstates. I-5 near me in Seattle, I-90 across the country, I-10. Wherever you live, you got a big interstate next to you. You just ride it the whole way. Beautiful guardrails. The rest, and you can go on forever. But Canada, for the vast majority of the way, is all the equivalent of like a rural U.S. highway where you're on a single lane, maybe a double lane road, but then every 20, 30, 50 miles, however long you go into the speed trap, you go into the small city, you drive by the post office, you drive by the McDonald's, you got to slow down, you got to go to your stoplight. You cannot make the same amount of progress. And with that, there's all the turns, all the people turning onto the freeway. On there, we ran into Canada just has poor weather. So in their short summer, this was when all the construction. So the number one thing or number one problem we were scared about was just the construction flaggers. Not it driving through the construction. It does great, especially in a follow the leader type way. We had one example. It was in the middle of the night. I guess also in Quebec, but it was a dirt road. There was honestly close to a 50-mile stretch in Quebec, freshly paved, but there was no lane markings at all, no shoulder lines, no dividing lines, nothing. It was just complete, just rumble strip and bare asphalt. And then it turned off into, you have to go across the median, and there was construction. And then we're driving down on the opposite side of the road, so we're on the westbound side. The navigation's freaking out. But FSD's, following the leader. It's doing great. It's driving, what would be the opposite, but it knows it has all the context, has the brain to figure that out, and then eventually drives on the median on the dirt road and gets back on the freeway. But going back to the construction flagger, we're trying to go all the way across Canada. We're filming. We're trying our best not to do any input whatsoever. And you get 1,000, 2,000 miles into the drive, and all it takes is one construction flagger to even barely move it, not stand like a statue. The car thinks it's going to yield, and then it's going to go on oncoming traffic, and it's going to end your streak. It's not a necessarily safety critical thing because you can immediately take over at 1 mile an hour, but just for it to actually recognize the context that a stop sign with the flagger is not only a stop but a stop and wait. A regular stop sign, you stop, you see it's clear, and you proceed. But a flagger, you're there and you're waiting until it says yield. Canada, it was saying slow, similar thing. It turns around to yellow, and then it would drive on the opposite side of the road again and leave. But there was one, it was in Western Ontario. It's about 1 a.m, and we get there. Can't follow the leader in this instance. We're the lead car. We're staying there. It's pitch black construction, small town, and the guy stays there. It's the longest 90 seconds of my life, but it stays strong. And we turn around, go through it. It drives through the cones perfectly, and we end on our way. But just night and day difference. The roads in Canada wasn't what I expected. They weren't. The quality of them was fine, but I thought you hear Trans Canada, that's their one big freeway across. I thought it would just be like driving across I-90 across our great nation, but it's a completely different beast.
Cool. I've driven through Montreal, and that city is crazy with the traffic lights and everything, the intersections. I'm sure it was an interesting city to drive through on FSD. Was there anything unique that stood out with Montreal in particular?
Luckily, it was in the middle of rush hour traffic, and we got rerouted around the island. We were just letting FSD do its thing, and that was the most thankful part. But just all of Quebec, super odd. There's blinking lights. There's red, but then it has like green right arrows. I mean, I can't think of anything, but there's 4 or 5 things that are unlike anything else you see in North America. All native to many French land, but yeah, but luckily we didn't have to go downtown Montreal. But I had gone there 14.1 last November, and it definitely struggled. So we're fortunate to have the spring update and get to use it then. But wouldn't recommend going there.
Awesome. All right. Last question here is for Koby. Since Tesla has acknowledged that Hardware 3 cannot support unsupervised FSD in its current form, what would a realistic Hardware 3 upgrade path look like? Is replacing the computer and cameras enough, or are there deeper vehicle architecture limits that make retrofits harder than people expect?
Yeah, so a big part of that is the cameras can't really pick up all of your minor road debris, and that's the big part about the cameras. There's just not, even with Hardware 4, that's been an issue for a while. Is you have a string across, there's cones and a string, and it'll just drive right. It thinks the string's not there because it can't see it, and that's why they're having to upgrade Hardware 3 as well, the cameras. Now there's a big debate among people that are arguing about Hardware 3. What do they have to upgrade? What parts of it? They will replace the computer. That's kind of a given. And Elon confirmed that they will have to replace the cameras. But it's talking about, what are these modified cameras like? Because there's connectors and there's cables, right? Do we change out the connectors? Do we have to reroute the entire cable and replace it with a thicker cable? From all of the research that I've done and taking apart wrecked Teslas, the cabling that they use is a coax cabling to the cameras. It's a 50 ohm coax cable, can support Hardware 4 cameras. Just the connectors and then what's called serializers, which is turning the data into how it flows across the coax, would need to be changed for Hardware 4 cameras. So the same sensor can be used. They're just going to have to recreate the camera, the connector, serializers around that. So the biggest part about upgrading Hardware 3 to a Hardware 4 like Hardware 4.5 or something similar to that is going to be them taking out the entire frunk and then taking out that computer and replacing that computer. That's the big issue. With hardware 4, if they ever would need to do a replacement of that computer, they have very much made it where it is able to be replaced a heck of a lot easier because you don't have to take as much of the frunk apart. And you can tell they've learned their lesson to not create vehicles that it's hard to replace the computer on. And I'm excited to see kind of how the microfactories end up turning out. But that's one thing that I'm working on is, don't talk too much about it, but upgrading my own hardware 3 car to hardware 4. So I'm excited to see how that goes. And it's a long process. But I'm excited to see where that goes. And I'm sure Tesla will fulfill that because they have some of the best engineers on earth. And I think we can all, live that experience when you click start FSD in a hardware 4 or, double click the thing. Their engineers are incredible and they'll do what's required.
That's awesome. So Kobe's built some of his own neural networks, and he gets his hands dirty with all this stuff with the hardware. If you get a chance, stop by his car, because in his trunk he has hardware 4 and hardware 3. They're torn apart, and you can see the casings, and he has a lot that he can tell you more about the different platforms.